I released my boat into the middle of the Homeowners Association Clubhouse fountain at 2 in the morning. It was the same boat they'd towed without warning after I'd legally parked it in my driveway for 15 years. If they wanted to see my boat in water, I'd give them a show they'd never forget. The look on Violet Cooper's face when she found my 24-foot boat floating in their precious fountain the next morning, worth every penny in fines. But that wasn't the end. That was just the beginning. They had no idea I'd been preparing for this fight for months. Blue Cove Estates had been my sanctuary for 15 years. As a mechanical engineer constantly solving other people's problems, coming home to the quiet curve of our oak-lined street, the breeze from the lake, and the sight of my father's fishing boat waiting patiently in the driveway. It was everything. I'd bought the home knowing the HOA rules backwards and forwards. The boat, Legacy, had been in the same exact spot since day one, with no issue. Legacy wasn't just a boat. It was my father's pride. And now it was the bond between me and my son, Tommy. Every Saturday we worked on her together, sometimes polishing the hull, sometimes rewiring an ancient GPS unit, and sometimes just sitting in silence, eating sandwiches, and talking about school. After the divorce, Tommy lived with me full-time during the school year. Those Saturdays were sacred. Dad, do you think we could take Legacy out next weekend? I think she's finally ready, Tommy asked, elbow deep in wax. Maybe not next weekend, buddy, but soon. Very soon, I promised. I didn't know then that our peaceful routine was about to be shattered. The first warning came dressed in designer sunglasses and war paint disguised as makeup. I was trimming the hedges when I noticed her, clipboard in hand, snapping photos of houses like she was scouting for demolition. "Good morning," she said without a trace of warmth. "I'm Violet Cooper, new HOA president, just doing a community assessment." She took a photo of my manicured lawn, then pointed her camera directly at Legacy. I didn't worry. I knew the rules. But my neighbor Bella Reed, a sharp pediatrician, with no patience for nonsense, leaned over the fence. "Watch out for that one," she muttered. "She's already talking about modernizing the neighborhood to boost property values." Still, I wasn't concerned. "Legacy's completely within regulations," I assured her. I checked before I moved in. "Just saying, Eli, rules tend to change when people like her take charge." 1 week later, I got the notice. HOA annual meeting. Normally, I'd skip it. The meetings were an endless loop of petty complaints. But Violet's sudden obsession with clipboards and Bella's warning stuck with me. That night, the community center was packed. Violet stood at the podium like a villain out of a courtroom drama, flanked by Anthony Jenkins, the meek treasurer, and her ever-nodding husband, Tony Cooper, in the front row. Then came item number 7. Proposed update to our parking. "Regulations," Violet announced. "Effective immediately. No boats, RVs, or commercial vehicles may be parked in driveways or visible areas." She flipped to a PowerPoint slide with a giant photo of my driveway, of Legacy. "This diminishes community aesthetics and property values," she said flatly. My hand shot up. "I've lived here 15 years with that boat. The current regulations permit it." Violet's fake smile turned razor sharp. "Times change, Mr. Warren. We're evolving." Worse, she claimed the board had already voted, meaning the neighborhood never got a say. When I returned home, a bright orange notice was taped to my door. "New regulation effective immediately. Violators subject to daily fines." That's not how this worked. I knew the bylaws, 30 days minimum notice, and any major changes required a full community vote. Someone was playing dirty, and they were coming for my father's legacy. The next day was chaos, client meetings, troubleshooting at a manufacturing plant, and I didn't get home until after 7. The moment I turned down my street, I felt it in my gut. Something was wrong. Legacy was gone. My heart raced. I tore through the front door and grabbed Tommy. "Did you see anyone take the boat?" "No, Dad. It was already gone when I got home." I called the police, shaking. But as soon as I mentioned the HOA notice, The officer's tone shifted. Sounds like a civil matter. If they had it towed, it's not technically stolen. His advice? Take it up with the HOA. I knocked on Bella's door. They actually did it? She asked, horrified. I saw the tow truck earlier. I thought it was for a breakdown. Violet was supervising the whole thing like a general at war. I called Violet directly. She answered like she hadn't just torn apart my world. Oh, your boat? She purred. Per the new rules it was. Removed by Valley Towing. You were properly notified there are, of course, fees. Valley Towing was 20 minutes away, then they closed in 15. I drove like a man possessed, skidding into their lot as the last worker turned off the lights. You the guy with the fishing boat? One of them asked. We've been pulling boats from your HOA all day. $500 for the tow. $100 per day. For storage. Cash only. As I paid, a second tow driver approached quietly. You're Warren? I'm the one who towed your boat. I don't think I did it right. My stomach sank. The HOA lady, Violet, she was rushing us. Said it had to be gone before you got home from work. He looked ashamed. Man, I've never towed a boat that size before. I think I damaged the propeller when we dragged it onto the flatbed. I stood there in the dim lot, staring at my father's boat in the shadows. Legacy, scratched and scarred. Something inside me snapped. They didn't just break the rules. They broke our bond. And I was going to make them pay for it. Every single one of them. The HOA claimed the vote had happened and towed my boat less than 24 hours later. For a moment, Violet's composed facade cracked. If you have concerns about our processes, you're welcome to submit them in writing for consideration at the next quarterly meeting, she said sharply. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual HOA business to attend to. She turned to the secretary. Call security if Mr. Warren refuses to leave. I left, but not because I was intimidated. I needed to regroup. I needed a plan. Back home, I inspected Legacy, my boat. I traced my fingers along the deep gouges left where the tow hooks had been improperly attached. Something in me snapped. I could almost hear my father's voice echo in my mind. You can't let them get away with this, Eli. And I wouldn't. It was time to find out who Violet Cooper really was, and why she had set her sights on me and my boat. You definitely have a case, said Melissa Parker, a lawyer specializing in real estate and HOA disputes. She was reviewing the documents I'd brought to her office. Bella, my neighbor, had used her services during a property line fight last year and strongly recommended her. What they did violates several provisions of your HOA bylaws, not to mention state regulations. About notification and voting procedures, Melissa added. She leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen thoughtfully. But filing a lawsuit will be expensive and time-consuming. These cases can drag on for months, even years. Are you sure you don't want to try mediation first? I shook my head, firmly. This isn't just about my boat anymore. Something's off. The way they targeted me, how quickly they acted, how they scheduled the tow before the meeting even ended. It feels like there's more going on. Melissa nodded. You might be right. HOAs can sometimes become little kingdoms for people who crave control. But this seems unusually aggressive. Let me do some digging into recent board activities and property records. In the meantime, document everything. Every notice. Every interaction. Every bit of damage. Bella provided another key lead when she introduced me to Walter Campbell, the former HOA president who had stepped down 6 months ago. We met at a quiet coffee shop away from Blue Cove Estates. Walter, a sharp-witted 70-year-old retired aerospace executive, didn't sugarcoat anything. Violet Cooper orchestrated a hostile takeover, he said flatly, stirring his coffee. She scheduled the election meeting on a holiday weekend when most long-term residents were away. Then she rallied a bunch of newer homeowners, people who barely knew the community, and stacked the vote. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. Walter explained that he'd moved to Blue Cove after retirement and served on the HOA board to help preserve the quiet, family-oriented community feel. But here's what's interesting, he said, leaning in. Her husband Tony is a real estate broker, Cooper Luxury Properties. He started popping up at events about a year ago, talking about property values and unrealized potential. Then Violet ran for HOA president on a platform of modernization and increased value. A quick search on my phone confirmed Walter's claim and uncovered more. Cooper Luxury Properties specialized in land assembly for development. They were in the business of quietly buying up lots to bundle into larger projects. Melissa and I began mapping all the properties that had received violation notices since Violet took over. A disturbing pattern emerged. Almost all were in prime spots, lakefront homes, corner lots, properties with extra large yards. My home? A corner lot with a pristine, unobstructed view of the lake. Then came another clue. Melissa's contact at the county records office sent over a list of recent property transactions. 3 homes in Blue Cove had sold within the last month, all significantly below market value, all to different LLCs. But they all traced back to one parent company, Westlake Development Group. Digging deeper, we discovered Westlake was planning a luxury condominium complex nearby. But they needed enough adjacent properties to make it feasible. The final piece clicked into place when Bella, who served on the board of the local hospital, overheard a conversation between a Westlake executive and another trustee. Tony Cooper was Westlake's exclusive listing agent for the new development. It all made sense now. This wasn't about HOA rules. The Coopers were systematically pressuring homeowners in strategic locations to sell low so they could flip the land to Westlake. Then came the smoking gun, delivered by none other than Greg Webb, the tow truck driver who damaged Legacy. Guilt-ridden, Greg forwarded me internal emails from Valley Towing's dispatch system. The original tow request from Violet was time-stamped during the HOA meeting itself. It included clear instructions to tow the boat immediately upon rule approval and to delay release until the next day. But the most damning part? An email thread between Violet and someone using a Cooper Luxury Properties address, discussing how to incentivize reluctant homeowners through aggressive HOA enforcement. Armed with this, I invited several affected neighbors to my house. Among them was Dorothy Wilson, a 75-year-old widow who'd received violations for her bird feeders and gnomes. The Millers, young parents, were fined over a basketball hoop in their driveway. We spread out the documents, connected the dots, and saw the truth. The violation notices, the mysterious property sales, the development plans, they were all part of the same scheme. The HOA can't just force us out of our homes, Mrs. Miller said, her voice trembling. That has to be illegal. Not exactly illegal, I replied, but definitely unethical and possibly actionable. According to Melissa, using HOA powers for personal financial gain is a massive conflict of interest. We decided to form a neighborhood action committee. Step 1. Force a special HOA meeting to challenge Violet's actions and maybe remove her. The next morning, every person who'd attended my meeting received identical notices on their door. Violation, unauthorized assembly, conducting business, activity in residential zone, $200 fine. Violet was sending a message. She was watching, and she was ready to punish anyone who opposed her. I read the notice, felt my jaw tighten. This wasn't just about my boat anymore. This was about my home, my community, and standing up to bullies who thought they could steamroll everyone in the name of profit. If Violet Cooper wanted war, I'd give her one she'd never forget. Melissa advised we proceed methodically, build a clear legal case. We began collecting signatures for a special meeting, documenting every infraction, every irregularity, every shady move. Violet doubled down. My grass was cited for being a 1/4 inch too tall. $50, my trash can stayed curbside for 35 minutes too long. $75, a bird feeder in my backyard. Unauthorized feeding station, $100. The worst came when the HOA urgently needed to repair the irrigation line on my property. The sprinklers were cut off for 2 weeks, in the height of summer. The grass died. Then came a violation. Notice for failure to maintain landscaping, $300. But that wasn't all. Amy, my teenage son, recorded video of a man tampering with our irrigation control box. He wasn't clearly identifiable, but he cut a wire and left quickly. We had enough to suspect HOA sabotage. We reached out to Brian Walker, a city councilman from the next neighborhood over. He was sympathetic but said the city's hands were tied. Unless it violates city code, HOA actions fall under civil law, he explained. Your best bet is your bylaws or court. Still, he promised to have the city check for code violations. At the same time, Vanessa Roberts, a local reporter, started sniffing around. HOA's gone wild? That's headline gold, she said. But I'll need more than angry homeowners. I need evidence. I gave her just enough to spark her curiosity, but held back our full hand. She promised to investigate Westlake and the Coopers further. Feeling the pressure, Violet tried to rally her supporters. She announced a new community enhancement, a $30,000 clubhouse fountain, paid out of the HOA reserve fund. This will be the crown jewel of Blue Cove Estates, she wrote in the newsletter, a symbol of our shared future and pride. Renderings showed a multi-tiered LED-lit water feature straight out of a Las Vegas casino. It wasn't just a fountain. It was her declaration of control, but she wasn't done yet. The day before the unveiling ceremony, I received 2 devastating letters. 1. A bill for $2,000 in accumulated fines with a 48-hour deadline, or they'd place a lien on my home. 2. A legal warning threatening further enforcement if I continued to disrupt community harmony. I stared at those letters and made a decision. They wanted to use their fountain as a monument to Violet's power? Fine. Then I'd make sure it became a monument to her downfall. The envelope was thick, formal, and delivered by hand. Inside, an offer from Cooper Luxury Properties to purchase my home as is, citing my unfortunate HOA complications as a potential hardship they could relieve. The price? 30% below market value. The same offer had gone to every other active committee member. Our group chat was flooded with photos and furious disbelief. It wasn't subtle. This was their endgame. The Coopers, using the HOA as a legal crowbar, wanted us all to fold sell low or be bled dry. That night I sat in the garage staring at Legacy, my late father's boat. The fiberglass gash along the hull still glistened under fluorescent light. Repairs would cost thousands. Money I might soon need for legal fees if Violet really filed a lien. My hand rested on the curved hull, fingers brushing over old memories. Tommy appeared silently beside me. Are we going to have to move, Dad? His voice was quiet, eyes wide in the half-light. I hesitated. No, buddy, I said, wishing I believed it as much as I sounded. We're going to fight this. Just not sure how yet. My phone buzzed. A text from Bella. Photo attached. The HOA clubhouse fountain was nearly complete. Brand new stonework, low railing, a wide-open basin. Her caption read, "Security's a joke. One half-asleep guard named Kevin. Cameras don't cover the courtyard." Tommy leaned over my shoulder, studying the image. They always whine about where we park the boat, he murmured. Maybe we should park it somewhere more appropriate. I turned to look at him, then at the photo, then back at Legacy. The idea was insane, reckless, impossible. But it was also brilliant. I wasn't just an engineer by trade, I was one by blood. My dad used to say, there's no such thing as impossible, just not designed yet. And this was just another problem to solve. By morning, I was in full recon mode. Under the guise of a jog, I scoped the fountain dimensions, depth, and entry routes. It was roughly 30 feet wide, 3 feet deep, just enough to cradle Legacy's hull if supported correctly. The courtyard service entrance was secured with a rusted padlock, barely worthy of the name. Cameras only watched the parking lot, not the fountain itself. Violet had scheduled the unveiling ceremony for 10 a.m. the next day. If I was going to strike, it had to be before then. Silent, surgical, and spectacular. Bella didn't even flinch when I asked her for help. AM, I said. Just call in something low level. Suspicious teens, car doors getting pulled near the pool, enough to distract Kevin for 15 minutes. She tilted her head. You're not gonna do anything illegal, right? Nothing technically illegal. I smiled. Just unforgettable. She smirked. Then make it count. The rest was engineering. Tommy and I constructed a custom, waterproof frame, like a cradle for the boat to rest on, designed to hold Legacy above the fragile tilework without scratching a thing. We added pressure-drilled micro-holes in the hull, tiny and temporary, to create dramatic spray when the fountain activated. Then, in big, bold black letters, we painted the side. If it can't park on land, it might as well float. For flavor, we sprayed fake graffiti, lightning bolts, initials, and a crude stick figure giving the finger. Teenage prank, not calculated protest. Even left beer cans and burger wrappers in the staging bag. 30 a.m. Showtime. We pushed Legacy onto the modified trailer, rolled it onto my SUV, lights disconnected, and crawled through the quiet back roads. Not a sound. Krem, Bella's distraction. Hit. Guard Kevin went shuffling off toward the pool with his flashlight. Tommy, stubborn as his old man, was supposed to stay home. But he'd convinced me to let him stay on lookout duty, and I couldn't say no to that same determined stare I once gave my father. We cut the padlock with bolt cutters, replaced it with an identical one, rolled through the service gate. I winched, the boat slowly into the fountain center. It settled like royalty atop the hidden support. Spray nozzles tucked beneath Legacy's hull. Empty cans scattered. Thrift store varsity jacket patch tossed just outside the gate. By 2:45 a.m., the boat was in place, the trailer dismantled. Equipment hidden. Tommy and I stood side by side, breath fogging in the cold morning air. A high five sealed the moment. For the first time in weeks, we laughed. 15 a.m. My phone blew up. Photos flooded the group chat. Legacy, floating like the queen of the HOA courtyard, framed by marble lions and flower beds. Water seeped through the hull, arcing in sparkling sprays. By 7 row, neighbors were flocking in robes and flip-flops to see the spectacle. Laughing, snapping selfies. It was glorious. I arrived at 8 FAO, expression carefully molded into concerned homeowner mode. Violet was livid, screaming into her phone, pacing in designer heels across the wet stone. A cop car idled nearby. Officer Bradley, our usual community liaison, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. This is criminal mischief. Violet spat. Officer Bradley shrugged. No signs of forced entry, no damage to property, no evidence of vandalism. Looks like a prank. Then I stepped forward. This is my boat, I cried. Who would do such a thing? That's a family heirloom. Violet spun to me, eyes narrowed like a hawk. This is obviously you, Warren. Officer Bradley raised a hand. Ma'am, unless you've got footage, witnesses, or evidence. She didn't. She knew, but she couldn't prove it. And I wasn't giving her a single crack in the armor. Well, sir, I said, voice calm. I'd be happy to remove the boat, if the HOA provides proper towing this time. Wouldn't want more unauthorized damage, right? Snickers rippled through the crowd. Someone clapped. Violet's face turned the color of raw steak. By noon, Legacy had been carefully extracted. By the same company that had dragged it away illegally just days prior, this time at HOA expense. The unveiling ceremony was postponed indefinitely. Violet locked herself in the HOA office and refused to speak. Tommy and I stood in our driveway, polishing the boat with exaggerated care, accepting visitors like conquering heroes. That evening, Vanessa Roberts' article dropped. HOA Wars, boat makes splash in neighborhood feud. The photo showed Legacy mid-spray, surrounded by laughing residents. It went viral. By the next morning, Ethan Bennett, a local content creator, had uploaded a documentary-style piece titled The Fountain Incident: How One Boat Sank an Empire. Hundreds of thousands of views. Ethan's Video included interviews with homeowners quietly sharing stories of abuse, minor violations, sudden fines, and subtle coercion to sell. He even uncovered property records showing links between recent HOA violations and Cooper Properties purchases. "This isn't just a prank," Ethan said. "It's a reckoning." Violet and Tony weren't done. They retaliated with cease and desist. Letters hand-delivered by Andrew Stevens, a high-profile attorney. The message was clear: shut up or be crushed. But the tide had already turned, and they had no idea what was coming next. Lawsuits for defamation and conspiracy letters began arriving from Andrew Stevens, the HOA's attorney, threatening legal action for defamation and conspiracy. Any suggestion that HOA enforcement activities are connected to real estate transactions is false and defamatory, they read. Further dissemination of these accusations will result in immediate legal action. Andrew also contacted both the newspaper and Ethan, demanding immediate retractions. But our committee was undeterred. And then came the breakthrough. From the most unexpected source. Dorothy Wilson, a Blue Cove original resident since its construction, walked into one of our meetings carrying a binder like it was the crown jewels. "I never trusted those management companies to keep records straight," she said, placing it on the table. Inside was a meticulously organized archive of the original HOA founding documents and every amendment made over the years. Among them, the original covenant regarding vehicle parking. It clearly required a 75% homeowner approval vote to change parking regulations, not just a board decision. Even more damning, a mandatory 30-day notice period before any enforcement action could begin. Melissa immediately filed a formal complaint with the State Real Estate Commission, citing Tony Cooper's conflict of interest and potential ethics violations. Simultaneously, she prepared the paperwork for a special HOA meeting to vote on removing Violet as president. According to the bylaws, we only needed 25% of homeowners to force such a meeting. We passed that mark in just 2 days. As word spread, especially after the incident with the fountain, support surged. Violet struck back with fury. She posted notices around the neighborhood announcing a 100% increase in monthly HOA dues, allegedly, to cover extensive vandalism repairs and enhanced security measures. She also scheduled her own emergency meeting to discuss legal action against those engaged in conspiracy to defame the HOA and its elected representatives. The neighborhood was now at war, split between longtime residents rallying behind us, and newer homeowners too intimidated or too entangled in Violet's incentives to speak out. The special meeting. The night of the special meeting, the community center overflowed. Residents spilled into the parking lot. Violet arrived, flanked by Tony, Anthony Jenkins, and Andrew Stevens. She went straight to the microphone. "This meeting is procedurally invalid," she announced. "Many signatures were collected under false pretenses. Any vote taken tonight will not be recognized by the board." But Andrew quietly stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "Actually, Mrs. Cooper," he said, his tone measured, "I've reviewed the bylaws thoroughly. The petition is valid. As counsel for the HOA, not individual board members, I advise that the meeting proceed according to established procedures." The room buzzed with murmurs. Violet stared at her attorney, stunned. But Andrew remained firm. The HOA must follow its own rules, otherwise, its authority is meaningless. With her objections crushed by her own lawyer, the meeting moved forward. Residents lined up at the microphone. One after another, they spoke of suddenly receiving citations after years of peaceful compliance. Mysterious property damage followed, by pressure to sell, and arbitrary fines targeting only certain parts of the community. Dorothy Wilson presented the covenant documents, disproving the legitimacy of Violet's parking enforcement rules. I followed with time-stamped emails showing that my boat was towed before the regulation had even been passed. The vote was scheduled for Saturday. But just as I stepped outside, Tony Cooper cornered me in the parking lot. His voice was low, almost casual. "You might win the vote, Eli, but Violet and I still have options. We could resolve this quietly. We're still interested in your property. We could make the HOA problems disappear. If you cooperate." I locked eyes with him. "You know what, Tony? You're right. We should resolve this like adults, but not the way you're thinking. His smile faltered. I leaned in. You might want to check your email more carefully. You never know who's getting copies these days. I walked away, leaving him frozen, the weight of his collapsing empire finally dawning. The day of reckoning. The week leading up to the vote was eerily quiet. Violet and Tony canceled all public HOA events and even routine tasks. Were left to the part-time secretary. Our committee doubled down, canvassing, answering questions, and preparing for Saturday. Melissa created a powerful presentation outlining every procedural and ethical violation the board had committed. What Tony didn't know was that I'd spent the past month gathering evidence from every angle, not just Greg's emails. Security footage from Valley Towing showing Violet personally overseeing my boat's removal. Bank records showing transfers from Cooper Luxury Properties to LLCs that had bought homes in Blue Cove. A recorded phone call where Tony openly tied HOA fines to their as-is purchase offers. And most damning, internal Westlake development. Documents, accidentally emailed to Bella's hospital address, that detailed a strategy of leveraging HOA relationships to acquire properties below market value. On Saturday morning, I added 2 unexpected names to the guest list. Mayor Margaret Harrison, who'd followed the story after Brian Walker's coverage, and William Foster, a Westlake executive who was reportedly fed up with the negative publicity. Both showed up just to observe. When the meeting started, Violet tried to take control again, attempting to run the proceedings. Andrew stood up. According to the bylaws, removal proceedings must be presided over by the last president in good standing, Walter Campbell. Violet's glare could have burned paper, but she had no choice. She sat beside Tony, who noticeably paled when he spotted Foster and the mayor in the audience. Walter took the podium and invited me to present the case. I connected my laptop to the projector and faced the crowd. This isn't personal, I began. This is about accountability, transparency, and the future of our community. I walked them through every violation, the improper election procedures, the sudden rise in citations, 90% of which targeted areas designated for Westlake expansion. Timestamps proving regulations weren't even approved when enforcement began. Tony tried to interrupt several times, but Walter maintained control. Then came the recordings. Tony telling a homeowner, "These HOA issues can get expensive. Our ASIS offer clears those headaches fast." Violet shot to her feet. "This is all circumstantial. There is no proof of conspiracy." Walter silenced her again. Then I dropped the final blow. "Mayor Harrison, Mr. Foster, you may find this last document particularly relevant." I displayed the internal Westlake memo, the one outlining plans to leverage HOA connections to facilitate below-market acquisitions, with compensation to key HOA members. The room exploded. William Foster stormed to the front. Westlake categorically denies knowledge of any improper activities. If these documents are real, they were created without our approval. He turned to Tony. "Your contract with Westlake is now suspended pending full investigation." Mayor Harrison stood next. "The city will be reviewing all permits and approvals connected to Blue Cove immediately." When the chaos died down, the vote proceeded. 7% voted to remove Violet Cooper. The aftermath, Andrew Stevens, no longer defending the Coopers, announced that the board would immediately rescind all improperly enacted rules and form a committee to review every enforcement action under Violet's tenure. Violations would be reversed, fines refunded, damages repaid. Walter Campbell was named interim president until proper elections could be held. Within weeks, the Coopers packed up and left. Their home was listed quietly. Tony's real estate license? Suspended, pending investigation. As for me, Legacy's repairs were fully compensated, along with additional damages for the illegal towing and retaliatory fines. The community began to heal. We enacted term limits, transparent procedures, and oversight committees to ensure nothing like this could ever happen again. Violet thought she could weaponize the rules and sell out our neighborhood. But in the end, it wasn't her power. It was the truth, the documents, and the community she underestimated. and that was her biggest mistake.